Chapter 7. The Return of Consequence. The news reached Achilles before anyone spoke it, a retreat forming too quickly, soldiers moving without purpose, the strange quiet that settles over an army when something irreversible has happened. Then he saw the armor, broken, still. For a long moment, Achilles did not move. The war had taken thousands already, but this was different, because Patroclus had entered the place Achilles refused to enter, and the war had answered exactly as it always answered, by taking what was offered. Achilles knelt beside him. His hand touched the damaged armor, the armor he had given willingly, the armor Patroclus had worn because Achilles would not. His voice was barely above a whisper. "Who?" A soldier forced himself to answer. "Hector." The name settled heavily across the camp. Achilles lowered his head and became completely still, not calm, not controlled, still in the way storms become still before they break apart. "He wore my armor." No one answered. "He went because I would not." Silence remained. The truth needed no discussion. Achilles already understood it. Patroclus had stepped into the space Achilles abandoned, and now he was gone. When Achilles finally looked up, the distance that had separated him from the war was gone. Only direction remained. "Prepare my armor." The words were not loud. That made them worse. The commanders exchanged glances, because whatever part of Achilles had withdrawn after Agamemnon took Briseis had died beside Patroclus. There would be no more refusal, no more distance, only return. That night the Greek camp remained silent. No songs, no celebration, no attempts to escape grief, only waiting. Far away within Troy's walls, Hector already understood what was coming, because he had seen Patroclus beneath the armor. He had seen the face of the man who stood between Troy and Achilles. One Trojan soldier tried to reassure him. "You defeated the Greek champion." Hector answered immediately. "No," a pause. "I killed the thing standing between us and him." The soldier had no reply, because everyone understood what Hector meant. Patroclus had not been the warrior Troy feared most. He had been the reason that warrior remained absent. Now that reason was gone. At dawn, Achilles armed himself. The Greek soldiers gathered without being summoned, not because they expected orders, because they wanted to witness the moment Achilles returned to war. Achilles never looked away from the walls, never spoke, never hesitated. Ahead stood Hector. Ahead stood Troy. Ahead stood the man who had killed Patroclus. And for the first time since leaving the war, Achilles was moving toward exactly what he wanted. The plain seemed to shorten before him, distance itself struggling to remain between the hunter and the thing being hunted. By the time Troy's walls filled the horizon, the war no longer felt like something still unfolding. It felt like something approaching its final answer. By afternoon, Achilles had reached the battlefield. Word of his return had already spread across both armies. The fighting had slowed, then stopped. Not because anyone ordered it, because everyone understood what was about to happen. Hector was waiting outside the walls of Troy, not because he expected victory, because there was nowhere else for him to stand. The Greek and Trojan armies spread across the plain and watched. No one advanced. No one broke formation. The war that had lasted nearly 10 years had narrowed to 2 men. Achilles walked forward. Hector tightened his grip on his sword. For a moment, neither moved. Then Hector spoke. "So it ends here." Achilles stared at him. "For you." And then they charged. The clash echoed across the plain, bronze against bronze. Hector fought with the skill that had protected Troy for years, every movement disciplined, every strike deliberate. He was everything the Trojans believed him to be. But Achilles was different now. He was not fighting for glory, not for Agamemnon, not for Greece. He was fighting for Patroclus. The duel moved across the battlefield. Neither army interfered. They could only watch. Hector landed blows. Achilles answered with harder ones, again and again, until Hector began giving ground. For the first time, the Trojan prince looked tired. For the first time, Achilles looked unstoppable. One mistake, one opening. That was all it took. Achilles drove forward. His sword struck true. Hector staggered. He tried to recover, tried to stand his ground, But the fight was already over. Achilles struck again. Hector fell. Silence spread across the battlefield. The Trojans stared. The Greeks stared. No one moved. Achilles stood over him, breathing hard, waiting, confirming. Hector was dead, the greatest defender of Troy. The man who had held the city together through years of war. Gone. Achilles looked toward the walls of Troy. The city still stood. The war was not over, but everyone knew something had changed, because Hector would never stand before them again.